starting with 1 million luck points. Chapter 201, Testing. Oh, really? Ling Shuaying's beautiful eyes moved. She did not expect Zhou Hao to be so cautious. Although every martial artist had many secrets, there was nothing that could not be said about the general scope of their activities. Zhou Hao was different. Whether it was his background or his way of doing things, he was very mysterious. He did not even reveal his own cultivation region. This made Ling Shuaying feel that Zhou Hao was filled with secrets. Ding Shiji could not help but be a little embarrassed. He did not expect these two to be like this after meeting. In fact, Ling Shuaying and Zhou Hao were very similar and were very mysterious. The difference was that Zhou Hao was a free martial artist, and Ling Shuaying was from the highest level Green Cloud Division in Huaxia. Ding Shiji's understanding of the Green Cloud Division was very limited. He only knew that the Green Cloud Division commanded the military and all the martial artists in Huaxia. However, perhaps because of his identity and other reasons, Ding Shiji had not been able to obtain any additional information. After Ding Shiji helped introduce Zhou Hao and Ling Shuaying, he left tactfully. He knew that what the two of them were going to discuss next was very likely not something someone of his level was supposed to know about. Ling Shuaying could not help but be speechless when she saw Ding Shiji leave. Although they were not in the same department, they were still colleagues working for the Chinese government. It was not a high-level secret. As a supernatural martial artist, Ding Shiji naturally had the right to listen. However, now that Ding Shiji had left, she could have a deeper conversation. How long have you been at the peak of the supernatural level? As Ling Shuaying asked, she stared at Zhou Hao very seriously. She was a martial artist with a perception physique. If Zhou Hao was lying, she would definitely be able to tell. Not long. Zhou Hao said casually as he pondered over the reason why Ling Shuaying had called him over. Ling Shuaying's identity should not be that simple either. She was definitely not just some investigator. Moreover, he was also very unfamiliar with this Green Cloud Division. It seemed that even Ding Shiji did not know much about it as well. It had to be known that before he appeared, Ding Shiji and the others were basically the strongest combatants on the surface. If even Ding Shiji did not know, it could be seen how mysterious he was. You really don't know how to chat. Ling Shuaying could not help but roll her eyes at Zhou Hao. She had always been extremely confident in her beauty. Especially since she was also rather enthusiastic towards others. Among the majority of the martial artists of the opposite sex that she had seen, very few were so cold towards her. In the end, Zhou Hao was like an extremely vigilant ice mountain. However, the more Zhou Hao acted like this, the more Ling Shuaying became interested. Ling Shuaying had already decided to investigate Zhou Hao thoroughly and find out all his secrets. Of course, Zhou Hao did not know that this woman was so terrifying. Just because he was acting cautious, she had already made up her mind to investigate him thoroughly. Why are you asking this? Zhou Hao spoke again and brought the topic back. In fact, he was more concerned about this topic. Ling Shuaying asked how long it had been since he cultivated to the peak of the supernatural level. Clearly, she had something else to ask after that. Humph, just asking. Zhou Hao was too mysterious and cold just now, so Ling Shuaying immediately became arrogant. Originally, one of her important missions this time was to give Zhou Hao a cultivation technique above the peak of the supernatural level. The realm above the peak of the supernatural level was called the Heaven Realm. After cultivating to this level, cultivation techniques that used to cultivate the blood essence of martial artists were already useless. In fact, no matter how one cultivated blood essence, they were unable to cultivate to the Heaven Realm. Zhou Hao was speechless. This woman was too arrogant. Although he did not appear too enthusiastic, he still answered the other party's question truthfully. In fact, it had not been long since he had peak supernatural strength. Seeing Zhou Hao's stunned expression, Ling Shuaying laughed a little proudly. Ling Shuang had already discovered that compared to the other peak-level supernatural experts, Zhou Hao was more fun to deal with. Other martial artists who had cultivated to this level were either old fellows who were on the verge of death or martial artists who were obsessed with cultivation. Clearly, Zhou Hao was different. What do you think is the realm above peak-level supernatural experts? After thinking for a moment, Ling Shuang still took the initiative to speak. She also wanted to see Zhou Hao's understanding of martial arts. She decided to gradually expose him after listening to him speak. Finally, she would take out the cultivation technique that the Green Cloud Division had asked her to transfer to Zhou Hao, making Zhou Hao admire her to the core. After all, this guy had always been mysterious and cold. When had she, Miss Ling, ever suffered such a cold face? Today, she had to teach this guy a lesson. Chapter 202, Imagination. Zhou Hao's heart skipped a beat. The question he was expecting had indeed been asked. It seemed that the many 9th-grade supernatural grandmasters entering the depths of the spatial rift was not a tradition. Instead, it was an arrangement made by those in a higher level. Or rather, it was at least related to this mysterious Green Cloud Division. Before today, Zhou Hao really could not answer what realm was above the 9th-grade supernatural level. However, now, due to a coincidence, he even had the cultivation technique that was most compatible with him. How could he not know about the realm above the 9th-grade supernatural realm? Zhou Hao even felt that he knew more about the realm above the 9th-grade supernatural level than Ling Shuang. While Ling Shuang was waiting for Zhou Hao to be dumbfounded, Zhou Hao suddenly raised his hand and pointed. As a force pierced through the void and killed an insect race expert hundreds of meters away, Ling Shuang was stunned. That was you. Wasn't the technique Zhou Hao was using right now the same as the one she had discovered on the insect race and demon race beings outside the spatial rift? No. That person used essence energy, and you just used blood essence. It's only because of the secret technique that you were able to activate the heaven and earth essence energy. In the beginning, Ling Shuang was somewhat shocked. Now, she was completely shocked. What the hell was going on? Shouldn't Zhou Hao cultivate the cultivation technique first and only cultivate the corresponding secret technique after obtaining the foundation of the cultivation technique? What kind of demon was Zhou Hao? He actually cultivated the secret technique first without even knowing what the cultivation technique was. Ling Shuang was certain that as long as Zhou Hao had not entered the spatial rift, he would definitely not know about the heaven realm cultivation technique. Therefore, Ling Shuang was very dumbfounded at this moment. She originally wanted to see Zhou Hao's shocked and lost expression, but now, she herself was shocked and at a loss. Did something happen? Zhou Hao probably knew what Ling Shuang was thinking, but he still pretended not to know. Did you once cultivate with an expert, or even the disciple of that expert? Ling Shuang combed her hair and asked uncertainly. In her opinion, this was the most reasonable explanation. Ling Shuang had already imagined a lot of information. For example, she started imagining that Zhou Hao was definitely the disciple of a heaven realm expert, so his methods were very similar to this expert. More coincidentally, not long after Zhou Hao appeared, she discovered the traces of that heaven realm expert. This meant that this master and disciple had definitely met recently. Zhou Hao did not know that Ling Shuang had such a rich imagination. The reason why he had taken the initiative to use the ultimate breaking finger just now was simply because of what he wanted to say next. I was originally not too sure what realm is above the peak of the supernatural level. However, after cultivating the ultimate breaking finger, I think I probably guessed something correctly. Zhou Hao was very helpless at this moment. This woman was very erratic. Just now, she was still asking him if he knew anything about the realm above a peak-level supernatural expert. In the end, she even asked him curiously if he had a master who was an expert. It made him extremely speechless. Ling Shuang felt that Zhou Hao had agreed by not answering directly. Zhou Hao did not refute that he had an expert master, which further proved her guess. She figured that Zhou Hao had suddenly appeared here and was very active at the front line defense line because he needed to meet up with his expert master. Of course, the Green Cloud Division did not care about such things. Every martial artist had their own responsibility in life. Even the Green Cloud Division would not interfere with a martial artist's personal life as long as they shoulder the responsibility that they should bear. However, if Zhou Hao had such a powerful master, wouldn't he know that the realm above the peak-level supernatural experts was the heaven realm? Thinking of this, Ling Shuaying quickly dismissed this thought. Actually, that might not be the case. It was very likely that Zhou Hao's master had not become a heaven realm expert before entering the spatial rift. Therefore, since the other party did not know about the heaven realm, Zhou Hao naturally did not know either. The two of them had agreed to meet at a certain time for the master to pass on his subsequent legacies. And that was why she had discovered traces of Zhou Hao and the heaven realm expert. The more Ling Shuaying thought about it, the more reasonable she felt. This made more sense. After all, why would a heaven realm expert suddenly come out from the depths of the spatial rift? It must be because he was worried about his precious disciple. Hey, why aren't you talking? Zhou Hao waved his hand in front of Ling Shuaying's eyes, feeling very speechless. This woman was too easily distracted when talking to others. Cough cough. All right, let's talk business. Ling Shuaying's face also changed unnaturally. She had been too smug just now and had nearly forgotten about the important matter. Chapter 203, Hidden Strength. Your hunch is right. Or rather, you are relatively special. Before cultivating essence energy, you actually forcefully cultivated this secret technique that requires essence energy. After coughing twice, Ling Shuaying indeed said the words essence energy. Essence energy. Zhou Hao was prepared to hide something and immediately pretended not to know. Yes, essence energy. The realm above the 9th grade supernatural level is called the Heaven Realm. Martial artists who have reached this level are known as Heaven Realm experts. There are 12 levels to this realm and it is a very long cultivation process. After entering the Heaven Realm, martial artists mainly cultivate essence energy instead of blood essence. As Ling Shuaying spoke, she stretched out her snow-white hand. After the aura in her body moved, strands of ice blue essence energy condensed into a beautiful and vivid blue demon concubine in her palm. Zhou Hao also knew that not only was this blue concubine beautiful, but she was also very dangerous. He was already very clear about the strength of essence energy. You're a Heaven Realm expert? Zhou Hao asked deliberately. In his senses, Ling Shuaying was not a Heaven Realm expert. She probably had not cultivated essence energy for long. Of course not. If I were a Heaven Realm expert, why would I still be here? Ling Shuaying complained and then took out a secret manual from his storage device and handed it to Zhou Hao. There's no need to be surprised. All the martial artists in Huaxia will receive this gift after they cultivate to the peak of the supernatural level. This is a Heaven Realm cultivation technique. Take a look and check yourself. After Ling Shuaying finished speaking, she could not help but be puzzled. Zhou Hao's reaction was almost unexpected. Shouldn't Zhou Hao be overjoyed that he had obtained a Heaven Realm cultivation technique so easily? Or could it be that Zhou Hao's mysterious master had already taught him a Heaven Realm cultivation technique? That shouldn't be the case. Judging from the time and the traces at the scene, Zhou Hao and his mysterious master had not successfully interacted at all. Although Heaven Realm experts could temporarily leave the spatial rift, they could not leave for too long. Zhou Hao looked at the items and realized that Ling Shuaying had handed him a secret manual that recorded 3 cultivation techniques. The first cultivation technique was called the Yuan Opening Art. According to the description in the secret manual, this was the most widely circulated heaven-level cultivation technique. Because this cultivation technique did not have any special characteristics, most martial artists had a certain compatibility with this cultivation technique. Zhou Hao immediately followed the instructions in the secret manual and did a self-analysis. Immediately, he realized that this Yuan Opening Art was really trashy. It was simply far inferior to his Grand Yan record. The previous owner of the Grand Yan record, Si Nangxuan, could not stop complaining about the Grand Yan record. If he was told to cultivate with the Yuan Opening Art, he might start cursing. If one had to measure it in detail, the cultivation effect of the Yuan Opening Art was at most 20% of the Grand Yan record. It was no wonder this item was so widely circulated. The Heaven Realm experts that cultivated this cultivation technique might even be the weakest existence among all the Heaven Realm experts. It was simply useless. Soon, Zhou Hao's attention arrived at the second cultivation technique. The name of this cultivation technique was very flashy. It was called the Divine Wind Sword Art, and one could tell at a glance that it was a cultivation technique that mainly cultivated sword techniques. After testing it himself, Zhou Hao was disappointed again. The Divine Wind Sword Art was indeed better than the Yuan Opening Art, but it was not much better. Are the Yuan Opening Art and the Divine Wind Sword Art not suitable? What's your compatibility with the Yuan Opening Art and the Divine Wind Sword Art? Ling Shuaying asked curiously. Although the Green Cloud Division had prepared 3 cultivation techniques for the peak supernatural experts of Huaxia, only the first 2 were more generalized. Most of the peak-level supernatural experts were compatible with the first 2. However, judging from Zhou Hao's reaction, he seemed to be very dissatisfied with the first 2 techniques. My compatibility with the Yuan Opening Art and the Divine Wind Sword Art is pretty good, but I want to take a look at this Greenwood Spring Autumn Art. From the name alone, Zhou Hao could tell that the final Greenwood Spring Autumn Art was definitely more advanced than the previous 2 cultivation techniques. Of course, his compatibility with the Grand Yan record had directly reached the peak. No matter how heaven-defying the Greenwood Spring Autumn Art was, he still wouldn't change his cultivation technique. However, he had just come into contact with the Heaven Realm. It was always good for him to understand more. Chapter 204, Green Cloud Division. I see. Hearing Zhou Hao say this, Ling Shuaying also relaxed. If Zhou Hao's compatibility with the first 2 cultivation techniques was extremely low, it would be troublesome. It had to be known that those 2 cultivation techniques were both extremely generalized cultivation techniques. If one's compatibility with those 2 cultivation techniques was extremely low, then it was likely that one would not be able to find a suitable cultivation technique to cultivate. I'll choose this one. After checking himself, Zhou Hao chose the Greenwood Spring Autumn Art. His compatibility score for this cultivation technique was only above 70, far from reaching 100 for the Grand Yan record. However, if he wanted to make a choice now, he naturally had to choose the Greenwood Spring Autumn Art. Regardless of whether he cultivated it or not, he had to choose first. Are you sure? Ling Shuaying looked at Zhou Hao in surprise. The level of the Greenwood Spring Autumn Art was not low. Most martial artists' perception of the Greenwood Spring Autumn Art usually had a compatibility score of 1 to 30. Only those with a compatibility score exceeding 35 could be qualified to cultivate the Greenwood Spring Autumn Art. I'm sure. Zhou Hao said indifferently. After all, he wouldn't cultivate it anyway. Or perhaps, he could also cultivate it to fool others. Sure, but your compatibility needs to exceed 35. How high is your compatibility with this cultivation technique? As Ling Shuaying spoke, she took out a testing device. This was not something that Zhou Hao could just casually say. Such a high-level cultivation technique came with an extremely precious comprehension crystal. Comprehension crystals were left behind by Heaven Realm experts who also cultivated this cultivation technique. There were very few of them. Therefore, Zhou Hao had to have a good compatibility before he could cultivate this cultivation technique and receive the comprehension crystal. I probably have 70 points of compatibility. Zhou Hao said casually and began to test according to Ling Shuaying's requirements. Oh, 70 points. Wait, what did you say? Ling Shuaying was instantly speechless. Zhou Hao really dared to say something like that. Even if he had 50 points of compatibility, it would still be very impressive. He actually said that he had 70 points of compatibility without thinking. Hey! Just as he finished despising Zhou Hao for being ignorant, Ling Shuaying was immediately proven wrong. It turned out that Zhou Hao was not lying. This guy's compatibility score had actually reached a terrifying 75 points. In other words, Zhou Hao was being too conservative by saying that he had 70 points of compatibility. In an instant, Ling Shuaying looked at Zhou Hao with a complicated expression. Disdain, shock, envy. After starting to cultivate the Heaven Realm cultivation technique, Ling Shuaying knew even more clearly how important the compatibility of the cultivation technique was. The cultivation technique she cultivated had a compatibility score of only 60 points with her. She did not expect Zhou Hao to have such great compatibility. While feeling envious, Ling Shuaying also handed a comprehension crystal to Zhou Hao solemnly. What is this? Zhou Hao realized that he had never seen a stone that was shining with white light before. It seemed that there were still many things he did not know about outside the spatial rift, let alone inside. This is the comprehension crystal left behind by a Heaven Realm expert. The mental strength of a Heaven Realm expert has already undergone a qualitative change. Through some special treasures, they can be preserved for a long time. After Ling Shuaying explained, Zhou Hao gradually understood. This kind of comprehension crystal contained a portion of the comprehension of a Heaven Realm expert. These crystals were very helpful for juniors that cultivated the same technique. Unfortunately, Si Nangxuan did not leave such a crystal behind. Of course, with Zhou Hao's compatibility with the Grand Yan record, even if Si Nangxuan left behind the comprehension crystal, it would still be of limited use to him. In the future, after he cultivated to the Heaven Realm, he could leave behind comprehension crystals for Si Nangxuan's descendants, provided that he still had descendants. Are you considering joining the Green Cloud Division? Ling Shuaying was very tempted by Zhou Hao's monstrous talent. What's the Green Cloud Division? This was undoubtedly another topic that Zhou Hao was very interested in. The Green Cloud Division is the highest level division that directs and manages the Huaxia military and all martial artists. After martial artists cultivate to the peak of the supernatural level, they will be invited to participate in the assessment. After passing the assessment, some martial artists will choose to enter the spatial rift to cultivate. Some martial artists can temporarily stay outside the spatial rift and work in the Green Cloud Division. Ling Shuaying introduced simply. Can I choose not to participate? Zhou Hao asked openly. He did not want to be restricted too much. Of course you can, but the cultivation technique you have is only at the basic level. If you don't enter the Green Cloud Division, you won't be able to obtain any merit points. Naturally, you also won't be able to obtain any subsequent cultivation techniques. Ling Shuaying crossed her arms in front of her, as if she was certain that Zhou Hao would join. Zhou Hao's compatibility with the Greenwood Spring Autumn Art had reached an astonishing 75 points. She did not believe that Zhou Hao did not want the subsequent cultivation techniques. However, Ling Shuaying did not know that Zhou Hao had another Grand Yan record that was even higher than the Greenwood Spring Autumn Art. She was also completely unaware that Zhou Hao's compatibility score with that technique had even reached the maximum of 100 points. If he had known about this, Ling Shuaying would definitely not be so confident. Chapter 205, Essence Energy Crystal. Then, what do you need to do after joining the Green Cloud Division? Do you need to enter the spatial rift immediately? Zhou Hao did not really need the subsequent cultivation techniques of the Greenwood Spring Autumn Art. In fact, with the Heaven Dao software, he might even be able to obtain the subsequent cultivation techniques very quickly. He might as well take the opportunity to dig up some useful information. Of course not. The Green Cloud Division is the top division in Huaxia. Members usually cultivate and rarely have missions. Unless there are any special circumstances, there's no need for us to immediately enter the depths of the spatial rift to fight. However, when you cultivate to a certain extent and discover that your cultivation speed outside the spatial rift is getting slower and slower, to the point of stagnation, you will naturally want to go deeper into the spatial rift. You have to know that the path of cultivation is like sailing against the current. If you don't advance, you will fall behind. In a place with thin heaven and earth essence energy, it's not easy to maintain a high cultivation level without falling behind. Zhou Hao had been listening intently as Ling Shuiying spoke. These things were not recorded in Si Nangxuan's cultivation notebook. Clearly, these should all be general knowledge. That was why Si Nangxuan had not written them down in his cultivation notebook. So if I don't enter the depths of the spatial rift and cultivate to a certain extent, will it be impossible for me to maintain my cultivation level in the outside world? Zhou Hao felt that there shouldn't be such a limitation. Even if it was like this in the beginning, after so many years, the experts should have found a solution by now. Of course there's a way to maintain it. Look at this. Ling Shuiying took out a pale blue transparent crystal from her spatial storage. Colored energy crystals? Zhou Hao immediately asked. No, the energy in this crystal is heaven and earth essence energy. After watching for a moment, Zhou Hao's heart stirred. The blue transparent crystal in Ling Shuiying's hand contained an extremely powerful energy. If it were in the past, Zhou Hao might not have known. However, now, he knew very well that this was heaven and earth essence energy. It was a higher level energy that was above a martial artist's blood essence. This crystal that contains heaven and earth essence energy is called an essence energy crystal. It's also known as an essence crystal. Essence crystals need to be exchanged with merit points. There are also 4 types: low grade, intermediate grade, high grade, and top grade. Zhou Hao was just about to touch it when Ling Shuiying put it away, treating it like a precious treasure. Zhou Hao smiled bitterly. He had no intention of taking it for free. He just wanted to get a closer look. This is the benefit of joining the Green Cloud Division. By joining the Green Cloud Division and completing missions, you will be able to obtain merit points. With merit points, you will be able to obtain essence crystals. How is it? Do you want to consider it carefully? She believed that even without her explanation, Zhou Hao could also understand how useful the essence crystals were. With essence crystals, the cultivation speed of peak-level supernatural martial artists would increase drastically, allowing them to reach the heaven realm even faster. And if one did not prepare to enter the spatial rift after becoming an early-stage heaven realm expert, their need for essence crystals would only increase. It was even to the extent that after becoming a heaven realm expert, the cultivation effect of using essence crystals would also be better. Therefore, no matter who it was, they had no reason to refuse. Seeing Zhou Hao's curious expression, Ling Shuiying was even more certain that Zhou Hao would definitely join. After all, this was something that many people wished for. How frequent are the missions in the Green Cloud Division? And what are they like? After thinking for a moment, Zhou Hao decided that he could contact the Green Cloud Division. According to Ling Shuiying, there weren't any powerful heaven realm martial artists outside the spatial rift, so he didn't have to worry too much. The missions of the Green Cloud Division are not distributed. Instead, members get to pick their own missions. You have to complete at least 10 1-star missions or 2 5-star missions every month. Of course, you can also choose to complete other missions. As long as the total number of stars obtained from the mission exceeds 10 stars. This isn't classified information anyway, Ling Shuiying said casually. In the distance of the front-line defense line, Ding Shiji and a middle-aged man with a hideous claw mark stood together. This middle-aged man's figure was ramrod straight as he stood like a spear. His aura was also like an abyss that surged and exploded. As he stood there, the soldiers and martial artists at the front line of the defensive line felt much more at ease. This person was one of the experts of the Huaxia military, Xiao Zhongtian, one of the 4 god generals. Although this person's martial strength was powerful and his military achievements were outstanding, he was not as solemn as ordinary martial artists. His personality was very unique, and he was secretly very gossipy. For example, at this moment, looking at Ling Shuiying and Zhou Hao in front of him, Xiao Zhongtian felt that the two of them were very compatible with each other. It had to be known that although Ling Shuiying was talented and powerful, she was very arrogant. Usually, she would explode in anger after spending 10 minutes with a male martial artist. But now, the two of them were talking for a long time without her showing any signs of impatience. How rare! Chapter 206, A Blood Loss. Old Xiao, with you gone, will the spatial rift in the north be all right? Ding Shiji was in no mood to gossip about Ling Shuiying and Zhou Hao. He was still worried about the spatial rifts everywhere. Xiao Zhongtian was one of the 4 god generals. Like Zhou Hao, he was also a peak-level supernatural expert. For a long time, he had been holding down the fort in the spatial rift in the north. However, recently, there were many abnormalities in the spatial rift on this side, and the danger level was constantly increasing. After careful consideration, the Green Cloud Division directly sent Xiao Zhongtian over. Firstly, he wanted to understand the situation and figure out the reason. Secondly, he wanted to provide additional support just in case. You don't have to worry about that. After all these years, the military has still nurtured many successors. Actually, the real trouble is still over here. Even with me around, I'm worried that the situation will probably not be optimistic. Xiao Zhongtian's current actions contrasted with his words. At this moment, his gossiping soul was still burning as he looked at Ling Shuiying and Zhou Hao in the distance with interest. He did not seem worried at all. Seeing that Ling Shuiying was so furious at Zhou Hao that she stomped her foot, Xiao Zhongtian couldn't help but laugh. Ding Shiji looked at Xiao Zhongtian's smile with a confused expression. He could not help but think to himself if he had said something wrong just now. The more he thought about it, the more uneasy he felt. On Zhou Hao's side, he had been asking about the Green Cloud Division. However, until now, he had not given a definite answer. Just as Ling Shuiying was about to explode in anger, he finally figured everything out. All right, I agree to join the Green Cloud Division. What are the procedures? Zhou Hao now knew that with his situation, there was almost no harm in joining the Green Cloud Division. The only downside was that he had to complete the mission quota of 10 stars per month. This was because the Green Cloud Division's missions were mostly combat and reconnaissance missions. These were all related to the foreign races. If he wanted to obtain luck points, he also had to constantly kill foreign races. All roads lead to the same destination. Therefore, killing the foreign races was killing 2 birds with 1 stone. That's simple. After I help you register on the intranet of the Green Cloud Division, you can access the intranet through the communication device. However, during your visit to the intranet, you have to look carefully at the rules of the Green Cloud Division. It's best if you can memorize them. As Ling Shuiying spoke, she began to help Zhou Hao record the basic information and open the intranet of the Green Cloud Division. After Zhou Hao logged in, he perfected the information and completed the registration. Soon, he saw that other than the usual martial artist regulations, there were also many confidentiality regulations. He naturally agreed to all of them. When Zhou Hao was registering to join the Green Cloud Division, they were also discussing him in the Green Cloud base. However, there was not a single person in the spacious meeting room. The 12 participants were all virtual projections. Clearly, none of these 12 experts were in Green Cloud base. Or rather, even if they were in Green Cloud base, they had things to do and could only participate in a virtual meeting. Have you seen the data and video data sent by Ling Shuiying? A deep voice sounded. I did. This President Zhou is really unbelievable. Another expert spoke. That's right. Before cultivating essence energy, he already succeeded in cultivating the ultimate breaking finger. I believe it won't be long before an extra seat gets added to this meeting room. When everyone heard this, they were very surprised, but they quickly understood. Zhou Hao's level of monstrousness was indeed extraordinary. All along, the few of them had been the true ceiling of the combat strength of the Chinese martial artists. And before Zhou Hao cultivated essence energy, he had already successfully cultivated the ultimate breaking finger, an essence energy cultivation technique. With this, he definitely had the qualifications to sit here in the future. This was because cultivating an essence energy technique at the blood essence stage was extremely difficult. It was no different from creating an atomic bomb using just a few scraps of metal. Thus, all of them were very impressed. Zhou Hao and Ling Shuiying were currently at the southernmost area of the front-line defense line and the core area of the spatial rift. Zhou Hao had already completed the registration procedures for joining the Green Cloud and had successfully accepted a one-star mission. Looking at the one-star mission he had accepted, Zhou Hao felt like he had lost money previously. This was because this mission was to kill 30 illusionary sound insects. Previously, he had killed an unknown number of illusionary sound insect groups. Unfortunately, he had not joined the Green Cloud division at that time and could not obtain any merit points. 100 colored energy crystals could be exchanged for a single essence crystal. Of course, 100 merit points could also be exchanged for a single essence crystal. One could obtain 10 merit points by completing a one-star mission. Zhou Hao had previously killed nearly 2,000 groups of illusionary sonar insects. If he had joined earlier, he would have 600 merit points and could exchange for 6 pieces of essence crystals. It had to be known that essence crystals were very valuable. Previously, Ling Shuiying was even unwilling to let him touch them. Just thinking about it made his heart ache. Chapter 207, Mutated Illusionary Sound Insects. You've killed so many illusionary sound insects before, so you should be very experienced in finding them. Ling Shuiying was surprised to see Zhou Hao struggle with finding the illusionary sound insects. For a moment, she could not help but begin to suspect the authenticity of the matter of him killing the illusionary sound insects. Could it be that this guy was taking credit for other people's contributions? Or was it because this guy wanted to monopolize the credit and obtain more merit points, so he deliberately didn't tell her where the illusionary sound insects were? The more Ling Shuiying thought about it, the more she felt that this was the case. She could not help but secretly despise Zhou Hao. Previously, there were nearly 3,000 illusionary sound insect groups and it was very easy to find them. Later on, I had to rely on luck to find them. As for the special method to search for the illusionary sound insects, even you don't know. How could I know? Zhou Hao felt that he hadn't done anything wrong. He also wanted to gain merit points in exchange for some essence crystals. After learning about the Heaven Realm, his thirst for essence crystals was extremely intense. This was because he had to enter the spatial rift to completely resolve the problem with Su Ling. If he had the help of the essence crystals to break through to become a Heaven Realm expert, then he could enter the spatial rift. Although he wouldn't dare to be careless, at the very least, he would have the strength to protect himself and wouldn't be easily trapped. Petty. Ling Shuiying ignored Zhou Hao's words. She stubbornly felt that Zhou Hao definitely had some special method, but he was just unwilling to share it with her. According to the previous statistics, 80% of the illusionary sound insects that appeared this time had all died at Zhou Hao's hands. Under such circumstances, she would definitely not believe that Zhou Hao did not have a special understanding of the illusionary sound insects. I think I've found them. After traveling for a while, Zhou Hao's eyes lit up. Zhou Hao was certain at a glance that these illusionary sound insects were the ones that had escaped last time. There was indeed a long path to justice. Humph! I knew it. You definitely have special methods. Ling Shuiying cursed in her heart. Men were all cheap and would not cooperate easily. She felt that she always had to rely on her anger to get them to do what she wanted. Now that she was angry, Zhou Hao indeed stopped beating around the bush and quickly found the illusionary sound insect groups. However, Zhou Hao was really innocent. After all, it depended on his luck. After all, he only had a larger perception range and could only discover the illusionary sound insect when they were within the range. However, judging from Ling Shuiying's current attitude, she definitely wouldn't believe it. There are more than 600 groups of illusionary sound insects here. If we each get half, won't we be able to complete the mission quota for this month? Zhou Hao looked at Ling Shuaying. That's true, but the illusionary sound insects here are different from the ones you killed before. Ling Shuaying was not as optimistic as Zhou Hao. She had already prepared to ask Xiao Jingtian and the others to help. Zhou Hao also discovered that these illusionary sound insects had undergone a second mutation. Be it the vegetation or animals on planet Earth, mutations could occur. After the first mutation, some plants and animals would become more difficult to deal with. However, these plants and animals would often undergo a second or even third mutation, making them even more terrifying. It was the same for the demon race and insect race beings of the foreign races. It seemed that only the machine race beings would not undergo such a second mutation or even third mutation. Last time, after most of the illusionary sound insects had been killed by Zhou Hao, those lucky escapees had undoubtedly been greatly provoked. Perhaps it was because of this provocation that they underwent a second mutation. Under normal circumstances, the illusionary sound insects were insects the size of a hornet with purple crystals. Now, most of their crystals had turned from light purple to dark purple. At the core area, some with red crystals even appeared. Clearly, these illusionary sound insects had already completed their third mutation. It was no wonder Ling Shuaying was so cautious. I don't think these red ones mutated because they were provoked, right? Zhou Hao looked at Ling Shuaying and asked. As a senior member of the Green Cloud Division, Ling Shuaying, who was ranked 72nd on the Skynet, still knew certain things. I can tell you these things now. As time passed, we also discovered that under special circumstances, mutation is very easy to occur around the entrance of the spatial rift. It's usually fine if they're low-level foreign race beings. However, if they're high-level foreign race beings like the illusionary sound insect, then mutation is inevitable. Therefore, once high-level foreign race beings appear around the spatial rift, we have to kill them immediately. Otherwise, this will happen. According to the internal information of the Green Cloud Division, there have been encounters of fourth mutation insect race beings before. Chapter 208, This kid is different. Hearing this, Zhou Hao could only smile bitterly in his heart. At the same time, he felt even more guilty. In this way, he had definitely made a huge contribution previously. In the end, because he did not join the Green Cloud Division in advance, he had actually lost so many merit points. Let's try to resolve it first. If we can't destroy it completely, we'll ask for help. After thinking for a moment, Ling Shuaying made a decision. In fact, she was very confident in herself. She had cultivated a heaven realm cultivation technique for a long time. Although Zhou Hao had killed many illusionary sound insects before, those were only the first mutation illusionary sound insects. There was definitely a world of difference between a first mutation illusionary soundworm and a third mutation one. Sure. The two of them immediately arrived at their respective areas and began to hunt the illusionary sound insects. Not far away, Xiao Zhongtian and Din Shiji also arrived. In the lush, vast, and dense forest, Din Shiji sighed secretly. This General Xiao Tianjun was really bored. At this moment, he actually had the mood to bring him here to watch Ling Shuaying and Zhou Hao kill the illusionary sound insects. Xiao Jiangtian's talent was very special. At this moment, special ripples circulated around him and Din Shiji, completely covering their auras. Therefore, when they appeared here, Zhou Hao and Ling Shuaying did not notice at all. Old Shi, look carefully. This will also be good for you. These two guys can basically be considered half-step heaven realm martial artists now. We can also see and learn a lot from their battles. As Din Shiji was ridiculing in his heart, Xiao Jiangtian's nosy expression changed as he spoke with a solemn expression. At this moment, Din Shiji was suddenly shocked. He finally understood. It turned out that Xiao Zhongtian did not have a burning gossip spirit. Instead, he wanted to learn from the Heaven Realm mystery. Similarly, he immediately realized that this was indeed an extremely rare opportunity. It had to be known that it was almost impossible to watch Zhou Hao and Ling Shuaying fight from a close distance. On this side, Zhou Hao and the illusionary sound insects were already fighting again. Zhou Hao could be considered to be acquainted with these illusionary sound insects. Zhou Hao's aura was very familiar to these illusionary sound insects. The moment Zhou Hao appeared, countless illusionary sound insects began to attack him. After encountering a first mutation illusionary sound insect, he only needed to use the ultimate breaking finger to destroy it. However, if he continued to use the same strength as before, it would not be easy for him to kill the second mutation illusionary sound insects. Fortunately, he already had a legitimate Heaven Realm cultivation technique now, so he could naturally use his essence energy openly under relatively restrained circumstances. On Ling Shuaying's side, she was fighting the second mutation illusionary sound insect while waiting for Zhou Hao to ask for help. After all, how long had it been since Zhou Hao obtained a Heaven Realm cultivation technique? He did not even have much essence energy stored in his body. Facing the second mutation illusionary sound insects, his blood essence power was basically useless. If nothing went wrong, Zhou Hao would not be able to last much longer. This guy had been acting so mysteriously previously, making her very displeased. This time, she had to make Zhou Hao suffer a little. As he pondered, Ling Shuaying also glanced sideways. Damn! Even Ling Shuaying, who had always been a lady, almost cursed in her heart. This Zhou Hao was simply a monster. He had only obtained the Greenwood Spring Autumn Art for a short period of time, but now, he was actually able to use it. That's right. Zhou Hao was already able to use the Greenwood Spring Autumn Art. Moreover, he was using it in combat. He was circulating the cultivation technique to extract heaven and earth essence energy with one hand and fighting with another. He was simply a monster. Ding Shiji also gasped as he watched from afar. After all, Ding Shiji also knew a little about the Heaven Realm. Now, after seeing Zhou Hao's performance, he was directly dumbfounded. They simply did not dare to believe that a half-step Heaven Realm expert was so terrifying. Cough cough. You don't have to be too surprised. This kid is different. I've seen many half-step Heaven Realm martial artists. This is the first time I've seen someone like him. Seeing Ding Shiji's dumbfounded appearance, Xiao Zhongtian also consoled him. Of course, Xiao Zhongtian was also very dumbfounded. If Zhou Hao was only slightly stronger, he could still accept it. However, Zhou Hao was simply too abnormal. Chapter 209, Never Admit Defeat. If this continued, what level of expert would Zhou Hao become in the future? Not far away in midair, Zhou Hao was secretly delighted as he attacked. He had really made a killing this time. These second mutation illusionary sound insects were extremely valuable. Every time he killed a group of illusionary sonic bugs, he would obtain 50,000 luck points, directly increasing his luck points by 5 times. At this rate, he would have another 15 million luck points. If not for Ling Shuaying fighting with him, the number would have been multiplied by 2. However, no martial artist was an isolated island. Although Ling Shuaying had some small personality flaws, it was still fine. He could just think of it as the price for making a friend. In the depths of the forest, Xiao Zhongtian was worried that if they continued to watch, their hearts might not be able to take it. After observing for a while, he decided to return with Ding Shiji. It couldn't be helped. Be it Zhou Hao or Ling Shuaying, they were both too heaven-defying. How infuriating! As a peak-level supernatural expert, he was still somewhat inferior to Zhou Hao and Ling Shuaying. What Zhou Hao was using at this moment was naturally not the Greenwood Spring Autumn Art, but the Grand Yan record. On the surface, he was only circulating the Greenwood Spring Autumn Art. In fact, the essence energy he used had long been refined by the Grand Yan record. Unfortunately, Ling Shuaying did not know any of this. Ling Shuiying was so shocked that she could only look at Zhou Hao in disbelief. After fighting for an hour, she retreated to the side and regulated her breathing to recover. In the end, Zhou Hao continued to fight as if nothing had happened. It seemed like he did not even spend any energy. Comparisons were indeed odious. After fighting for a long time, Zhou Hao also finished off the 300 and more illusionary sound insects that he was responsible for. Then, he looked to the side enviously. Seeing Zhou Hao's gaze, Ling Shuiying immediately panicked. "Don't even think about it. These are all mine." With that said, she ignored the fact that she had not fully recovered and charged into the insect groups again. "Actually, if you give me the materials, I can help you kill a portion of them. The final merit points will be yours." Zhou Hao thought for a moment and said. He did not need any materials at all, only luck points. However, it would be more strange if he said he didn't want the materials. Dream on. Even though Zhou Hao said that he only wanted the materials and would give the merit points to Ling Shuiying was still unwilling. This was the pride of an expert. He was helpless as well and could only watch Ling Shuiying suffer. Her cultivation speed was far inferior to Zhou Hao's. Her compatibility with the cultivation technique was even worse. However, Zhou Hao also saw how tenacious and persistent this woman was. There were several times when her essence energy was almost exhausted, but she still continued to fight these illusionary sound insects. After the battle ended, Zhou Hao did not have the intention to laugh at Ling Shuiying at all. His talent shocked Ling Shuiying, and her tenacity and persistence also moved him. "Did you see that? I didn't need your help at all." Ling Shuiying curled her lips proudly. Even though her essence energy had been completely exhausted and his meridians had been injured, she was still unwilling to admit defeat. All along, she had always been the best among her peers and was extremely competitive. Therefore, she did not easily admit that she was inferior to others. She also was not one to easily give up. After completing the mission, the two of them exchanged greetings and quickly parted ways. When the sun set, Zhou Hao had already returned to the training ground at the outermost edge of the front-line defense line. Su Ling and the others were still training here. Now, he had already learned the relevant information regarding supernatural experts. The urgent matter at hand was to continue cultivating essence energy and increase his cultivation. Of course, the problem with his cultivation technique could now be resolved. Although the Grand Yan record he was currently cultivating was not bad, the Grand Yan record was still not a top-notch cultivation technique. There were two reasons why the Grand Yan record was so heaven-defying when Zhou Hao used it. One reason was because he had a very high compatibility with the Grand Yan record. The second reason was because the martial artists Zhou Hao encountered were all cultivating ordinary cultivation techniques. In comparison, the Grand Yan record would naturally appear to be heaven-defying. Thus, there were still no problems with the Grand Yan record at this moment. However, as Zhou Hao's strength continued to increase, he would definitely come into contact with higher-level martial artists. At that time, the Grand Yan record would definitely not be enough. Otherwise, the previous owner of the Grand Yan record, Si Nangxuan, wouldn't have been complaining endlessly about this cultivation technique. Now, Zhou Hao had already accumulated 100 million luck points. No matter how high-level a Heaven Realm cultivation technique was, he would definitely be able to obtain it. This was because his compatibility with the Grand Yan record was extremely high. When it came to the cultivation of the Grand Yan record, he was at least 2 levels higher than his peers. If he could use the Heaven Dao software to upgrade the Grand Yan record this time, the difference would be even greater. By the time he advanced to become a Heaven Realm martial artist, even if he was only at the elementary level, his strength would definitely be unprecedentedly powerful. At that time, entering the spatial rift would undoubtedly be much safer. Chapter 210, System Upgrade. Zhou Hao immediately looked at his luck points. Luck points, 102,012,030, Lady Luck's favorite. Zhou Hao immediately prepared to open the mystery box in the Heaven Dao software. When he opened the Heaven Dao software, he was suddenly stunned. At this moment, the Heaven Dao software interface was as dark as the starry sky. In the center of the dark screen was a line of small golden words. System upgrade is in progress. The upgrade is expected to be completed in a day. Please wait. Immediately, Zhou Hao felt uncomfortable. He swept his gaze over the chat screen of the Heaven Dao software and realized that it was almost unprecedentedly lively. Because the Heaven Dao software was currently being upgraded, all users could not open mystery boxes or live streams. Therefore, everyone was complaining. Damn! I can't believe this is happening. Most users of the Heaven Dao software relied heavily on the Heaven Dao software and basically needed to use it every day. For the streamers on the Heaven Dao software, stopping the broadcast for a day meant one less day of profit. The impact was huge. There's nothing you can do even if you don't want to accept it. The system is upgrading. No matter how unwilling you are, you won't be able to use it. This has never happened before. I was really caught off guard. It's over, it's over. I'm in a hurry to open the mystery box. It's urgent. Many users kept flooding the chat box of the Heaven Dao software. Without a doubt, the sudden halt of the Heaven Dao software's upgrade had a very serious effect on too many users. Fairy Yuling sighed. Sigh, I wonder what will happen after the Heaven Dao software upgrades this time. Immediately, many users followed suit and expressed their opinions. After upgrading, many things should be optimized and simplified. There might also be new functions, a user analyzed. Zhou Hao also nodded. Although the Heaven Dao software from before was not bad, overall, many things were still too repetitive and complicated. In addition, the function of the Heaven Dao software seemed to be rather monotonous. He hoped that these problems could be resolved with the upgrade of the Heaven Dao software. Soon, Zhou Hao thought of something important. The Heaven Dao software announcement said that it would upgrade for another day, but it did not say when the upgrade started. Previously, he had been carrying out missions with Ling Shuiying, so he naturally did not pay attention to the upgrade of the Heaven Dao software. Zhou Hao immediately typed and asked on the public chat. I'm just an ordinary person. Does anyone know when the Heaven Dao software started upgrading? After Zhou Hao asked, many people also started asking the same question. Just now, everyone was only busy complaining. They did not expect that this was the problem that they should be most concerned about. The importance of the Heaven Dao software to everyone was self-evident. If there were any new functions or opportunities after the Heaven Dao software was upgraded, he definitely couldn't lose at the starting line. Some of the users who knew chose not to answer. They even hoped that the others would not answer. However, that was naturally impossible. Big shot, I know. It started at 12 noon today. I was using it when the system upgrade suddenly popped up. And I'm just an ordinary person. Wow! The big shot has appeared. Is it because the big shot got too many rare level items? Is the Heaven Dao software going to punish the big shot now? And I'm just an ordinary person. After Zhou Hao appeared, he immediately caused a commotion. Many users began to interact crazily with Zhou Hao, as if he might know something. However, Zhou Hao was also just as clueless. He had gained too much in real life these days and had not had the time to enter the Heaven Dao software. He did not even know when the Heaven Dao software started its upgrade, let alone know the inside story. After obtaining the information he wanted, Zhou Hao quickly left the software and continued to cultivate. As the Heaven Dao software was upgrading, an emergency meeting was held in the meeting room of the Green Cloud Division. Unlike before, 3 of them had already arrived at the scene with solemn expressions. The remaining 9 were still virtual projections. Everyone, let's get straight to the point. After a square-faced middle-aged man with black-framed glasses and a Chinese tunic suit sat down, he immediately spoke. The other 11 people naturally had no objections and listened patiently. According to reliable news, there has been a major change in all the spatial rifts on planet Earth recently.